Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name.
Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI Special Agent, whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks. Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Friday, September 22nd, 2023. It is a friendly Friday. Unfortunately, your fearless host, Kyle Seraphin, is not here. As he joked about yesterday, he jumped out of our little rickety lifeboat and he landed himself on the yacht. That is the Tim Pool podcast that'll be streaming tonight. But he is bringing along Garrett with him, and I think that will help the Seraphin and the Suspendables nation as we grow and continue to reach a great audience. And you have to fear not, because the real Steve Friend is here. So at least half of the Friendly Friday compadre is present to bring you your news and stories of the day that I think that will test the uncomfortable truths that are out there, leave you with some thoughts, some actual information I think you will find valuable. And I'm not going to be alone for long. I'm going to be welcoming in a guest, and we can bring him in right now, Ryan. And this is my friend and colleague, Wade Miller, who is the executive director of Citizens for Renewing America. But more importantly, he is a military veteran with a really boss beard. He is from Texas, so you are going to get your fix, Sarah fans. And we are going to have a discussion in a short amount of time about the budget drama that we're hearing about from Washington, D.C. But before we get into that, we do want to pay some bills. Ryan, could we get ready with our Patriot Cooler run? I want to point out that these are the OG sponsors of the Kyle Seraphin Show. These are the guys that we joke about all the time, that we always hear when people who disagree with us on one thing because they think that we agree with everything that they're articulating out there. They say that they've supported us from the beginning, but when it comes to Patriot Coolers, they definitely have supported the Kyle Seraphin Show from the beginning. So can we run that?
All right, what up, Rumble? We're here at the Texas-Mexico border. We're in Far Texas. I'm now in America with my Patriot Cooler. Guess what? Now I'm in Mexico with my Patriot Cooler. You guys want to stay cool when it's 105 degrees out here in Texas. Visit patriotcooler.com, promo code Kyle. That's Kyle, promo code Kyle. Show this channel some love. We're down here. And again, don't forget to tell Mayorkas that this border is definitely not open. No way. No border open here. This is where the Border Patrol agent told us to not stay put for too long, so we're going to keep moving on.
There's Ryan breaking some international law to bring you the Patriot Cooler, which is a fantastic product. I encourage everybody to get it, especially Christmas season's coming up, so take advantage of the Kyle Seraphin Show's promo code and get your gifts early. Also want to acknowledge Catholic Vote, The Loop. I got my email this morning. It's got some great information in there. I just lost one of my regular media news aggregator sources, and providentially, pun intended, the Catholic Vote The Loop has filled that need and void in my news gathering life. I'll look through my email today. Even has a story about how the FBI lost count of how many informants it had at the January 6th riot. Also, how Disney has now promised to come back and tone down the wokeness. So those are some of the news stories that they're covering today into your weekend. We have an inspirational video about Catholic vote. Ryan, when you're ready, you can go ahead and roll that.
What video number is that? Sorry, I didn't have that one ready, Steve.
No worries. We'll get to that later. Okay, so I wanna welcome in Wade Miller, who I gave his promo to. Wade again is the director over at Citizens for Renewing America, and he brings a wealth of knowledge. Wade, thank you very much for joining me today. We're going to get into a little bit of the weeds and the nerdy discussion about what we keep hearing about this budget discussion. I want to kind of give a Reader's Digest version of it, and you're definitely equipped to give that. But before I do, I want to kind of set the stage for what my mentality is, for what it's being represented in the news media. Ryan, can you cue up video number 1, and let's set the tone here for the discussion about the budget debate. Roll it. There you have it, Wade. That is from Deep Impact, obviously a great apocalyptic movie from the 90s. I think it's actually an apropos video because it kind of sets the stage for what are multiple views of what this pending budget debate is going to be. You have a one camp that says that it's going to be the end of the republic if the government shuts down. And then you have another camp that says, unless we address this, it's going to be the end of the republic. And in both cases, it will be a meteor of death that destroys everything in its wake. I would like for you to give us some information about that. But before we do it, a tradition on this show is, can you just give folks a little bit about your background, maybe bring us up to speed on who you are and why you're really sitting here, because I think that you're a great source of information.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. My background is I'm a dad, a husband. I was in college on 9/11. That kind of spurred me to want to join and fight terrorism. I didn't anticipate that 20 years later I'd look back and think that a lot of that wasn't really directed at terrorism, but other, foreign incursions and nation building efforts. But nevertheless, I value my service in the military. I'm a big fan of the Marine Corps as it was. I think it's going in the wrong direction now and getting super woke. But after that, I finished school, worked for some conservative groups. I was a political director for Senator Cruz, a chief of staff for Chip Roy, and I'm now back working for Russ Vogt at Center for Renewing America and Citizens for Renewing America.
All right. So you have worked with some of the conservative stalwarts at both the Senate and the House level, and certainly Russ was in the Trump administration. He's definitely a budget hawk. So I know you have your positions and views on the way that this budget fight should go. Can you just sort of break down the very bare bones basics of what we are facing at the end of what is this fiscal year? What does that mean? What is the budget, and what are they actually trying to achieve here in a vacuum? How this is going to work?
Sure. And so, kind of backing up to that video, that's what DC and the swamp want you to think is happening. They want you to think that a shutdown is just catastrophic to the republic. The reality is that unless you're a federal bureaucrat in the Northern Virginia and Southern Maryland area, you're probably not going to notice that the federal government's even shut down at all. So having said that, every year the House is supposed to pass a budget. Well, first of all, the president's supposed to put forward his own budget request, and then Congress is supposed to pass a budget. That rarely happens on time. And then you get into the summer, and then getting into the fall, you run into these funding deadlines, and all through the summer, you're supposed to be doing appropriations bills, and those haven't been passed yet either, largely. And then if those don't get passed, then you run into a situation where funding will lapse and you go up against the deadline. Right now, it's September 30th. And if you hit September 30th without funding government agencies, those agencies will shut down. Now, when we say shut down, we're really talking about a very little portion of the actual government. Social Security still works. Medicare patients are still seen. The Postal Service still works. The United States military is still functional and working and showing up. Anything that is deemed essential is functioning, and the president has broad authority to do that. So government shutdowns really aren't a big deal, but nevertheless, there's a vested interest in the swamp in DC to make it sound like it is doomsday. I think that if the video that you showed, what if it should apply to anything, it should apply to the carnage that is brought about by massively cutting the woke deep state that is increasingly enriched itself and increased its own power and scope, and use that to then target its political opponents. And keep in mind, it's not just the politically elected officials. It's not the people that Biden puts in charge of these agencies and nominates. They're the so-called politicals is what you call them in DC. It's just your regular federal bureaucrat, civilian that applies for a federal government job. And keep this in mind. Most of these agencies and most of these jobs are located in and around Washington, D.C. Northern Virginia and Maryland are heavily Democrat. So you're already up like 75, 80% of the job pool is going to be ardently far left. These are the type of people that are filling these bureaucratic positions. And they carry into the federal government their own biases. So you don't even need marching orders from a Democrat president. They just know to do it, and they know to oppose. So this is what Donald Trump ran into, is the federal bureaucracy was aligned against him. So even with good politicals in charge, they were just outmaneuvering and fighting and using all of the power they had to slow things down, to thwart the will of the president. So when you're talking about the deep state, that's what it is. And that's what conservatives are trying to line up right now to fight against, and say, we shouldn't be funding all of this. They're using taxpayer dollars to essentially fund a multi-trillion-dollar Democrat Party political machine. And we should have certain services of the government, but they should be downsized. And this isn't even necessarily a libertarian argument. If there's a good government agency function to be had, like law enforcement, for instance, the military, some way, shape, or form, federal taxes need to be paid. We could debate how that looks and what kind of tax policy looks, but you need some core functionality, but they've gotten way out of control. And so the fight now is to essentially put forward funding bills that attack all of this, that secure the border, go after COVID tyranny, go after woke and weaponized government, go after wokeness in the military, and then address the longstanding spending problem. That's the ask. It's a very reasonable ask, but unfortunately, like 50 to 60 to 70% of the Republican caucus would rather just go along with a standard do-nothing approach that funds all of the current operations and not actually pick a fight. So that's the dynamic we're in, is we have Democrats who are just fine with the status quo, Republicans who pretend to not be fine with the status quo, but are angling behind the scenes to just make the status quo extend another year and not actually defund any of the woke and weaponized activities of government. And then a smaller contingent of conservatives that are saying, well, hell no, it's time for us to put a foot in the, down and draw a line in the sand. And we don't cross that. We defend this line and we fight for Americans. And I think that that's what a lot of us are urging Congress to do now is pick that fight. If you articulate it and actually grow a spine, I think that it will resonate with the American people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially towards the end there, where you're saying that there are a certain number, a small number of these representatives out there who are trying to articulate this case. Ryan, I would like you to pull link number 2 here. I think that Dan Bishop's probably amongst that small cadre, and he pointed out on his Twitter profile recently that the debt has the national debt, which we keep borrowing money to fund the government. And since we had the debt limit debate a couple of months ago and we raised it, basically they can go forever now. There's really not a limit on it, but they've borrowed another $1 trillion. And Dan Bishop pointed out that every family in America would have to kick in $260,000 to pay that amount of debt off. And and look back to the analogy about the meteor strike on Earth. I think it gets advertised as if the government shuts down, we're going to suffer a consequence like that. But I view it the other way. I view it as the fact that we haven't addressed this growing debt, that is this tidal wave that's going to come and destroy everything. I feel like most of the politicians are like that guy who's reading the newspaper with his back to the water, just going along, not really caring. There's some that are out there maybe fighting the battle. They're the ones that are either in the traffic line or hopping on the motorcycle to drive up into the mountains to avoid the waters as they come. But ultimately, and we can look at news link number 1 here. This was something that Tom Elliott put out, and I'd really like your thoughts on this, Wade. This was something that absolutely blew my mind. He pointed out that if you were to eliminate all of the federal workers, 24 million people, the workforce entirely, we would still be at a deficit for this year's spending. We're not taking enough money to even cover the mandatory spending. So what's the plan if, let's say, this small cadre of, the revolutionaries, they're able to convince the masses that we need to have radical change? What's the plan to actually pay off $33 trillion? Is it even feasible, or are they just going to have to inflate our way out of this and we're all just going to have to switch into a different currency?
We can actually do this, but it takes Congress being serious. So, at Center for Renewing America, we actually put out a budget showing mathematically how you would attack this. And by the way, how you would do it by largely not touching the programs that people depend on, like Medicare and Social Security. Not saying that those programs couldn't use reforms, but you can balance the budget by largely not touching those at all, and then shifting the budgetary fight to woke and weaponized government. And there's this meme in DC, and there's a reason that this meme exists, that the only way you can balance the budget is by going after mandatory spending. You do have to touch some mandatory spending programs, but the most popular programs you don't actually need to touch. And the reason that DC perpetuates this meme is because Social Security and Medicare are mandatory programs. And so they always say that we've got to, Republicans especially say, we've got to reform those programs to balance the budget. Well, it gets them off of regular appropriations bills, so they don't have to deal with that. And that's where all of their earmarks and all of the pork spending and all of the kickbacks that go to their district, that's where all that occurs. So they take the debate off of that, move it onto Social Security and Medicare, and then that never happens because they know politically it's very unpopular. Democrats are never going to go along with it. And then at the end of the day, what happens is you've now funded the woke and weaponized bureaucracy for another year. So you can go after some mandatory spending, but if you actually take a giant meat cleaver to the federal bureaucracy through appropriations bills, and this year it would mean taking spending from about 1.59 trillion to about 1.47 trillion. Not a lot, really. I mean, that's a haircut. We could go way deeper than that. But if you can get discretionary spending down just that amount and then put it on a new baseline, in 10 years, you can balance the budget. And then when you factor in the growing economy over 10, 20, 30 years, a balanced budget, over time, you actually start to eat into that, and you start to actually reduce the total amount of national debt. You can grow your way out of this problem over several generations of hardworking Americans, supporting this. But it takes resolve, and it takes conservatives putting their foot down right now and saying, we've got to fight for this. And for me, again, it's not even necessarily about a mathematical equation and a spreadsheet numbers adding up. It's that we have to do it. It's a mathematical certainty. If you believe in big government or small government, it really doesn't matter. The math doesn't lie. That meteor is coming for Earth. And if we don't change our trajectory, that math is going to come crashing down on us. But before that, even, if we don't address it, the woke and weaponized deep state is going to come crashing down on American liberties and our constitutional principles. We won't even get to a point where we can deal with getting our debt to zero if we don't tackle woke and weaponized government first. And right now, there's too many Republicans that want to pretend that that doesn't exist, or worse, they talk a big game, but then when it comes time to actually fight it, they're nowhere to be found, and they're trying to find the first off ramp, and they're throwing up the white flag and talking and using Democrat talking points to try to avoid an actual fight. And it's like Mike Lawler is a perfect example out of New York. This guy is the political IQ of a hamster, and he's out there spouting all these Democrat talking points. You would think the guy's a Democrat by looking at his Twitter feed, but he's actually a Republican, and he is trying his darndest to prevent us from actually having this fight for the American people. And he's threatening to go out and do a discharge petition with the Democrats, which, by the way, also can't work. That's a toothless threat. And now that conservatives know that, we've put that one to bed. But he was trying to make this deal where they would come in and just do a clean CR with like 5 or 6 Republicans and all the Democrats, and then just railroad through.
All right. Yeah. Can you just explain the CR, the continuing resolution, just for the layperson, what does that mean?
Sure. So you have government funding, and if you don't do appropriations bills, there's 12 of them usually. If you don't do those appropriations bills, and each one of them funds a certain part of the government, that's supposed to be the normal process of funding the government. Then you come up on these funding deadlines. And so what Congress does is they either do an omnibus bill, which is all of those appropriations bills into one giant bill, and those are terrible. I never should you support an omnibus bill, or at least rarely. I've never seen one I liked. If you don't do that, then often what is politically easier to do is a continuing resolution, which is just a resolution that says all of the previous funding in those exact amounts are continued on. And sometimes they'll have a few policy writers that kind of nibble around and change a few spending items, but it's essentially saying the spending that we already had will continue at those exact same levels for all of the agencies. So it's not a new spending bill. It's just saying the old one kicks in longer. And what the swamp wants to do now is say, let's do a CR for a year. And then what happens is conservatives lose any leverage points to actually fight the Biden administration before the next election. And so the swamp would love to do that. That's the uniparty solution. Conservatives are trying to use the leverage right now to force a fight on policy to actually fight for Americans.
Without assigning any sort of like nefarious intention to the people who want to keep the status quo going, what is their benign, innocent argument for we need to spend $7 trillion and be well in excess of the amount of revenue we're going in? We need to go further into debt. What is their actual case that they can bring to the floor and say, this is a net objective good?
Well, this will, I mean, for the few that may actually buy into this, this is kind of a progressive economic viewpoint that big government is important in that it drives the economy, creates jobs, helps redistribute wealth, arguments like that. But it's hard for me to not assign nefarious because so many of them actually want to use the federal government to target political opponents and to put forward federal laws and agency powers that will limit free speech and attack, force them to get COVID vaccines or lose their jobs or, be liable, somehow civilly if someone else happens to get sick because of them. There's all sorts of things that they're trying to use the government to do to attack us. It's hard not to be nefarious, but the answer would be classical kind of left-wing economic viewpoint, in that government investment is a net good to the economy and is a net, value producer. And that's just absurd. The math just doesn't add up. There's too many inefficiencies and wealth transfers. Anytime the government takes money and then puts it through a bureaucracy, it comes out on the other end a net loss. There's just no way around that. It's just the human nature. It's a structural inefficiency. Some structural inefficiency is necessary. We need to defend the United States of America, but doing so is a net value lost in terms of just pure value, because we're taking money out of the economy and putting it into bullets and other things that aren't actually growing the economy and investing in actual market. It's a artificial demand that is created by government. So they're all nonsensical arguments.
Okay. All right. Final thing from you that just would like to get your prediction, not necessarily what you would like to see, but if you had to put your Nostradamus hat on, how do you think this thing is going to shake out here in the final days before the end of the year, with the fiscal year, which is going to be September 30th? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I'm actually pretty optimistic. I think that conservatives are in a really good position to use the leverage that they have to force a fight on spending. And so right now, the House will likely put forward appropriations bills. Those will be shot down by liberals and Democrats, and then there will be a government shutdown. And so from there, I think that conservatives are in a good position to sustain that and say, look, if Democrats want to fund the government, you have to pass these appropriations bills. And at a certain point, Democrats will cave, because opening the government back up is more important to Democrats than it is to some Republicans. In other words, Democrats want the entire government open. Republicans only really care if some of the government opens. So there's a clear interest for Democrats to cave first if we hold the line. So if we stick to the blueprint and the plan, we're going to get a win here. The question is, how much of a win? Is it the full ask? Is there a deal that's struck and it's half of our ask? And then the question will be, is that worth it? Should we take the deal on the table? And those are all calculations that will have to happen in real time in the coming weeks. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be a government shutdown, which I'm fine with. So,
as am I. We had a test case in 2020 when they told us all to go home, and nothing really changed very much in our day-to-day lives. Wade, thank you so much. Where can folks find more about you and what you're doing at Citizens for Renewing America?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at Wade Miller _USMC, Center for Renewing America. My boss Russ Vogt, VOUGHT, is also on Twitter. I would definitely follow him. He's kind of the Yoda of the conservative movement in DC, in my opinion. So he's a must follow. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Wade. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. So that's one perspective there. I think Wade's a pretty good guy, and he's been around. He's been in the battles. He's an old war horse when it comes to so much of this stuff. And most importantly, as I said, he's got a really boss beard. He's from Texas, and he's a military vet. So you got your quasi Kyle Seraphin fix for your Friendly Friday. But I'm here to bring you along the rest of the way, and I still am loaded to bear here with some good information. And I want to cue that up with our next video, Ryan. I believe that's going to be video number 2.
Want me to roll it?
Yeah, you can go ahead and roll it. Sorry about that.
What's the matter with you? What the hell's to complain about?
Just
What? What's the matter with you?
it's not funny. I'm not like you. I can't do this shit.
I mean, what's that mean? Like what?
I'm not like heroic and everything. I'm not brave like you are. I'm not that guy.
Nobody's hero, kid.
You saved my life like 10 times in the last 6 hours.
Just doing my job, that's all. You know what you get for being a hero? Nothing. Get shot at. Get a little pat on the back, blah, blah, blah. Attaboy. Get divorced. Your wife can't remember your last name. Kids don't want to talk to you. You get to eat a lot of meals by yourself. Trust me, kid, nobody wants to be that guy.
Then why are you doing this?
Because there's nobody else to do it right now. now, that's why. Believe me, if there was somebody else to do it, I would let them do it, but there's not. So we're doing it.
That's what makes you that guy.
All right. That is from Live Free or Die Hard. It was sort of at the very tail end of the 90s action movies. I think that's the fourth installment of the Die Hard franchise. John McClane in a steroid-invested arena in the 80s when you had Schwarzenegger and the Stallones. It was always good to see Bruce Willis, who kind of looks like everybody's dad, out there shooting bad guys. And side note, that movie, to me, will always have a special place in my heart because I think that scene is actually pretty impactful. You know, just a willingness to be that guy. Nobody really wants to step outside of their comfort zone. But when they call your number up, you got to step up. If it's some of the heroic police officers that we've seen go into these school shootings, if it's a whistleblower like Kyle or like Garrett, whoever, when your number gets called, today's your Super Bowl, you got to be ready to go. And that was actually the first movie. And Ryan, I don't know if you ever had this experience. You tell me if you did. That was my first grown-up movie. I had finished college and was out and had my first grown-up job. And weekend came around like very early on, and I was sitting around the apartment and was like, I'm a grown-up. I'm going to go to the movies. So that was the first foray that I had where, I bought my own ticket and I was old enough. It was, I don't even know if it was rated R, but I, walked in by myself and sat there. So I've always, that pulls on my heartstrings a little bit as I look into the past. But I want to apply that mindset here and also combine it with what Wade was talking to us about, how the government's set up. And do we have representatives there that are willing to hold the line when their number gets called? Are they willing to do the right thing and actually serve their constituents? And that's why I'm still, despite Wade's pretty convincing case, I'm still firmly in the camp that think that tidal wave's coming. And I have a few things that I hear that I would like to bring here to send you off into your weekend, maybe on a little more somber note than most of us prefer. But I do think that Kyle Seraphin Show is all about embracing the uncomfortable truths. So can we move on to a discussion about Ukraine? And this was in the news this week with the greatest leader, the Winston Churchill of our time, Vladimir Zelenskyy, made his address in front of the United Nations. Video number 3. Ryan, when you're ready, can you please roll this one?
Thank God people have not yet learned to use climate as a weapon. Even though humanity is failing on its climate policy objectives, this means that extreme weather will still impact the normal global life, and some evil state will also weaponize its outcomes. And when people in the streets of New York and other cities of the world went out on climate protests, we all have seen them. And when people in Morocco and Libya and other countries die as a result of natural disasters, and when islands and countries disappear underwater, and when tornadoes and deserts are spreading into new territories, and when all of this is happening, one unnatural disaster in Moscow decided to launch a big war and kill tens of thousands of people.
Vladimir Zelenskyy, the greatest leader in the world, apparently, who actually makes John Fetterman look like Hugo Boss with his wardrobe. He is there. He's at the UN. He is doing the bidding of, I guess, what you would expect of a leader for a corrupt Eastern European country. He's passing the till around, taking up a collection, paying homage to the religion of the woke, and that is the climate religion. And let me just issue this qualifier, and this, I'm in a pretty unique position, Ryan. It's sort of like being the white guy with the black friend who therefore can't be racist. I am married to a woman from Ukraine. Actually moved here a little while back, so she was not a refugee of it. But I can speak from a position of authority on this issue, and my wife has my back. I was very skeptical now a year and a half ago when this whole conflict erupted, when Russia invaded in Ukraine. And look, I feel horrible. There's a humanitarian disaster there. But those sorts of things happen all over the world all the time. And for one reason or another, this one sort of captured the attention of the American people, and the politicians were very quick to jump on that, to use it for what I argue is their ends, both from the Democrats and the Republican Party. We can pull up topic number 3. This was Tom Cotton issuing a statement, combined statement, I think, with Lindsey Graham and others, urging President Biden to provide actual missile technology to Ukraine. And Tom Cotton has a reputation for being pretty a conservative stalwart, but he definitely jumped in on that. I guess it's going to enable his military contractor donors to hit their quarterlies and keep this whole thing going. And last night we even learned that the Pentagon, if there is a shutdown of the government, will exclude any sort of monies or material that it's going to send over to Ukraine from the shutdown parameters that would limit their ability. So those essentially we're guaranteeing that we're going to send that information over to Ukraine, even if there's a government shutdown. So what is so special about this little Eastern European country over there? And I think we've dug into it a lot. A lot's been exposed to the connections to the Biden family, and Peter Schweizer has written a whole book about it. I don't think it's unique to the Biden clan. I think that there's a lot of politicians that go over there with the grift. But not even touching on that topic, I want to talk about the actual conflict with Russia and how it made my spider senses go off in the very early days of it. And I had this sensation twice in the last few years. And Ryan, you have to tell me if you had experienced anything like this. But I felt like I was alone and on an island in March of 2020. And I remember it because they were shutting down the entire country for this virus. And I was in Iowa and it was snowing, and I was looking out the window deciding when I was going to have to go out and start shoveling my driveway. And I must have had the 1,000-yard stare when my good and faithful Ukrainian wife came up to me and said, "What's wrong?" And I absolutely lost my mind and started screaming obscenities that are not appropriate for the family-friendly Kyle Seraphin Show, because I knew everything was going on was a complete and utter scam. It just didn't make sense. It was a catastrophic failure of any decision-making from my perspective. And I disagreed with it wholly. Now, flash forward to February of last year, and I got that same spidey sense. And I don't think it's without merit. I think that there's quite a bit of evidence that there's a parallel between Ukraine and the COVID lockdowns. And I wrote them down here just so I didn't overlook anything, but kind of molded over my head yesterday. It didn't take too long. It took probably about 5 or 10 minutes to come up with this list of comparisons. We had an infallible figure, Anthony Fauci, Vladimir Zelenskyy. There is the virtue signaling. Wear your mask. Make sure you post the Ukrainian flag emoji or bumper sticker or t-shirt at all times. If you criticized the COVID lockdowns or mechanisms, you just wanted grandma to die. If you criticize the U.S. getting involved, you're a stooge for a Russian despot. There's this appeal to authority. We have to trust the science. And we are told that Ukraine is dominating the war. The Russians are on their heels. We were told a number of myths. Millions of people were going to die unless we took these drastic measures. And then we had a ghost of Kyiv. Not Kiev, by the way, it's Kyiv. I've consulted with the spouse on this one. Actually, fun fact, if you say Kiev, that's considered tremendously insulting to somebody of Ukrainian persuasion, because the Russians do that to sort of needle them. So it's Kyiv. Another myth, the vaccine is safe and effective. The sanctions that we're putting on Putin have caused the price hike, the Putin price hike. There's no alternatives. You can't take ivermectin, you got to get the jab. Or you can't go outside and get vitamin D. You got to make sure you get boosted. We need total victory. Ukraine must win, not only repulse the invasion from the Russians, but maybe even take over Russia itself. There was sloganeering. Stay home, stay safe. We have to be involved in this war to save democracy. Shared suffering. We're all in this together. We have to endure inflation, the Biden message that the Putin price hike. We have to endure this for as long as it takes to win the war. There is censorship on media, social media, for both, if you disagreed. Emergency powers. There was a shutdown of your ability to move around this country freely, make health decisions for yourself, worship the way that you saw fit, have your children get educated, and even your bodily autonomy, your ability to breathe the free air. We also had to have emergency powers that caused shortages and price spikes for everybody. So I came up with that list in about 5 minutes. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that one, buddy?
I couldn't agree more, man. I think you absolutely are spot on with it. It's so bad when you know that same speech that you played of Zelenskyy there. I don't know if you saw the one where the Ukrainian media outlets doctored that footage, and they took Zelenskyy, and Zelenskyy was sitting in the crowd, but they didn't realize it. So when he was speaking, they like kind of cut over to the crowd to make it look like the crowd was massive. And they forgot to take Zelenskyy out of the crowd. So he was speaking, and then they showed the crowd, and Zelenskyy was sitting in the crowd. It's hilarious, man. It's all a scam, just like COVID when they were staging the scenes in the camps of people dying and all these dead people, and then all of a sudden you like see like the dead bodies sit up from the or they would go like moving blocks, and like it was supposed to look like a big stone, and like this person would just come over and pick it up with their bare hands and move it like it was just a foam stone. So yeah, man, you're spot on.
I mean, in COVID, look, I think that's the GOAT right there. The Ukrainian war has obviously cost trillions of dollars. I would like to actually see a cost comparison. I don't know if it's even calculable, one versus the other. But I like to say the Venn diagram of those two, to me, is nearly a complete circle. And I want to stay on the COVID topic too. We can take it to the next. We can move off of Ukraine and on to COVID. COVID-23, the election variant. It's here, folks. Get ready. Topic number 7.
What topic was that? Topic 7, got it.
Yeah, let's bring up topic number 7. This is a discussion about mask mandates that are going to be in multiple counties in California. And I think it's interesting because of the emergency and the imminence of this dangerous threat that is COVID-23, which is going to leave us all. I mean, if anybody survived the Trump tax cuts, you're certainly going to die from COVID-23. And it's so bad out there that we need to mandate masks in 6 weeks. This is going to actually start in November and is going to carry over for 6 months in these counties. And, I put it out on my social media when I read this. And obviously there was a lot of comments about, I will not comply and just say no. Look, these people complied with it. These small community despots and dictators, they got their taste of power. They'll comply with it again. I don't feel bad for them. It's really not that hard to say, I'm not going to put a face diaper on to breathe, and I'm going to breathe the free air. The science doesn't make any sense. The logic of it doesn't make any sense. I remember when they came out with that original message with the masks. And look, everybody knows, there's all the science behind it. The air gets in the side, the particles are too small. But to me, the ultimate was when they said that you wear your mask to protect others and they wear their mask to protect you. It was very much the shared sacrifice. We're all in this together. And I just thought about that and noodled around for, I don't know, about 10 seconds and concluded that if that was true, I should be able to turn the mask backwards, inside out, and put it on, and it would protect me, right? Because if Ryan's wearing a mask and it's to protect me, I can wear the same mask inside out on my face and it'll protect me also. But if you present that to the COVIDians, the branch COVIDians, or I like the mask holes, that doesn't penetrate the logic. So we have the mask mandates. They're starting. That's one. We can go to topic number 4, which is a discussion about how the Biden administration has now ordered some COVID tests. You can get your free COVID test. I think it's 4 per household now at a cost of $600 million that we're going to supply these tests to the home. Did you order free tests, Ryan, when it was available?
Oh, of course, man. I was the first in line to order. I pre-ordered.
Free stuff, man. Free stuff. Always got to get the free gear, right?
Yep.
I wonder what could we has devoted $600 million to. I mean, look, I think we need to slash everything across the board. We have $33 trillion in debt. That tidal wave is coming. People are congressmen and senators that are negotiating this budget coming up. They're not serious unless they're willing to cut, I don't know, 80, 90% of the government to actually address the problem. But obviously that's a farce. I'm very Pollyanna-ish if I think that's ever going to happen. But $600 million, how much of that could have been used towards giving some aid to Hawaii? I imagine that the $700 that all the families got there for the fire, they might have exhausted those resources now. I mean, it buys a lot of macadamia nuts in Hawaii. I've been there. The macadamia nuts are pretty inexpensive because they're a local resource. But Spam, that's pretty expensive. I remember that a gallon of milk at the store, because my family went there on vacation about 6 years ago, and a gallon of milk cost more than a gallon of gasoline, which to me was just mind-boggling, because you just get milk from a cow, right? I mean, there's a processing involved, but theoretically it just comes directly. It's renewable. It's from a cow, but somebody has to drill into the earth and pull oil out, and it has to go through a process to convert it to gasoline. And all of that happens for less than just going out and milking the cow. But $600 million, what other sort of initiatives could be done? We always hear about kids that are in school and hungry. And how many school lunches could we purchase for $600 million? Who's going to object to that? How about our cash-strapped police departments? Let's keep community safe. No, we're going to get Q-tips and make sure that they can go up the nose and give everybody nose cancer, because if you are excessively exposing yourself to the chemicals in those, that's actually a carcinogen. So
I got a few,
for the
Steve.
first time. Yeah.
We could have ended homelessness. We could have given every high school graduate free STEM training. We could have rebuilt all of Maui homes. We could have built free drug treatment centers for fentanyl addicts. We could have built a pure steel wall 6 feet into the ground across the southern border. And we could have given Americans full health coverage insurance for just $25 a month. How about that?
I don't know. $600 million. I don't know if it stretches that far. We got like 400 million people in the country, but I don't know. I'll take your word. At the very least, it's better than buying Q-tips that go up people's nose, right?
Who do we get those Q-tips from, Steve? Who's manufacturing these? Who do you think's benefiting from that?
I think it's probably a bunch of kids sitting on a dirty floor in Indonesia doing it.
I remember
that. So staying on this topic, let's go to topic number 5, which is from Mike Schellenberger. And he's a great journalist. Kyle and I have talked to him and his group over at Public, and he is promoting a news story that they have out there. You have to subscribe to it. And we were told when it came to the vaccine that you get the shot in the arm, it stays there, it keeps you safe, it's effective. And now it's appearing that it's moving around your body and actually getting into the breast milk of nursing mothers. So, and I believe Naomi Wolf has reported in some of her material that they've analyzed the breast milk of some women, and it's like blue in color. So we're living through an alien movie or something like that. Final topic on this one, topic number 6. The COVID vaccine may have killed 17 million people so far. This is actually a very interesting article that Daniel Horowitz wrote for Conservative Review. And they did this analysis of specifically in the Pacific Rim, the Asian countries, even including like Australia. And because when COVID first hit, they didn't have a lot of deaths. And then there was a question of, was it the lockdowns? Were they naturally predisposed to have some sort of resilience to it? But then the all-cause mortality spiked enormously in 2021. And what was unique about 2021? Because 2020 was the year of the COVID deaths. We didn't have any big pharma response to that outside of remdesivir and ventilators. But then we got the magical mRNA vaccine made available in 2021. And lo and behold, there is a spike in deaths in these countries that were previously seemed to be immune from the all-cause mortality that was occurring. And then it spiked again in the summer months of 2022 with the Omicron variant, which not nearly as deadly or as miserable to deal with as the original or Delta, but still we have this spike. And according to this study that Daniel was writing about, it appears that if the math on it is accurate, there is 1 death per every 800 doses. Not people, doses. And when you extrapolate that to especially the elderly, you have people that are on like their 5th, 6th, 7th booster. Every time, their odds of having an adverse event are very high. It's somewhere in the area of like 2% having an adverse event that might require a doctor intervention. But certainly the risk of death being there, you get 8 shots. I mean, you're looking at 1 in 100 that you're going to be taking a dirt nap.
Do you think it would compound after the first one? It seems like if you have multiple in your bodies, it would almost get exponentially worse. Like by the 8th one, you probably have like a 50% chance of making it.
Yeah, that's the question to me too. I mean, because there's obviously no long-term studies, especially when it comes to the boosters, and we're coming out with a new vaccine that the CDC is authorizing now. Unfortunately, I live in Florida where they've recommended people don't get it, and if they're saying it's very similar to the original vaccine and you should get it. But there's, again, no long-term studies. I think they did 50 people and one of them had adverse reaction. That's 2%. So use your discretion on this one, folks. I'm glad we're streaming on Rumble. I don't know what that just did to the 8 people probably watching on YouTube, Ryan.
That one might not be up very long.
We can pivot away from this one and to the last subject here where I want to talk about, is this that guy? Are you willing to step into the breach here? And I want to talk about the great Congressman Ken Buck from Colorado, member of the House Freedom Caucus, stalwart of conservative values. And the reason that Ken sort of came across my radar, he's done a couple things lately that got my attention because he does have a pretty good reputation of being a conservative guy. Obviously, being a member of the House Freedom Caucus bodes in his favor just ideologically for, I think, a lot of people who watch the Kyle Seraphin Show. But I first got suspicious when Christopher Wray testified in front of the Judiciary Committee a couple of months ago, or maybe it was last month, and they lambasted him. Matt Gaetz was all over him. Jim Jordan was all over him. Tom Massey was all over him. Everybody was all over him, except for Ken Buck. He kind of had this long, complimentary monologue where he said that, thank goodness for the FBI, never want to defund it. It's doing this great and wonderful work. And it just struck me as out of character for somebody with his reputation. So antenna went up a little bit for me on Ken Buck. And then I watched his performance with the Attorney General this week. And can we cue up video number 4? This is Ken Buck's intro to his time talking to Merrick Garland. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Steve, give me 1 second on that. I actually recorded. I thought it said 1:20 something. And I thought you meant 1 minute, but you were meaning like the 1 hour mark, right?
Yeah.
It's okay, give me 1 second. I recorded them both. I thought I messed up the first time, so this might not be perfect, but just give us a second. We're going to have that video ready for you guys.
Not a problem. And
all right, here it comes.
Here's the important. Okay.
Ready.
Oklahoma City bombing case. But in that case, the death penalty was asked for and actually received, and Timothy McVeigh was executed. Not exactly a Democrat priority to seek the death penalty in cases, but you did so because of the rule of law. You did so because the facts and the law demanded that you did so, and you followed the facts and the law in that situation. The other issue I wanted, or example in your bio that I wanted to point out, is my understanding that in your conference room, you have a portrait of Elliot Richardson. And the reason you have a portrait of Elliot Richardson is because he demanded that the Department of Justice stay independent from the Nixon administration. He had the backbone to stand up to the President of the United States and make sure that the Department of Justice would not become the government's lawyer. You put that portrait there soon after you became Attorney General because it was a signal. It was a signal to the world that you wanted to be known in the same way that others that had come before you were known. And frankly, one of the reasons I respect Attorney General Barr so much is because after January 6th, he made the very difficult decision to walk into the president's office and tell the president the election was not stolen. We have looked at this. And for that reason, he resigned before January 20th when power was turned over.
That's about all I can stand.
Attorney General, you're unable to answer some questions here, but I'll answer them for you. Do you know what people would have said if you
Right here,
had
this is the best part. We gotta let
asked
this play.
for U.S. Attorney Weiss's resignation when you became Attorney General? I'm sorry, U.S. Attorney. Yeah, U.S. Attorney Weiss's resignation. They would have said that you were obstructing the Hunter Biden investigation, that you were firing a Republican appointee so that you could appoint a Democrat to slow walk this investigation and lose the leadership of that investigation. If you had made the same decision a year later because you were frustrated that the prosecution wasn't moving fast enough, they would have again said that you were interfering with the prosecution. If you, when U.S. Attorney Weiss asked to become special counsel, if you had made the decision then to appoint someone else to special counsel, people would have criticized you because you would have been taking someone out of the investigation that knew the facts, that could lead the investigation, and put someone in who would have had to come up to speed on the investigation and wouldn't have allowed major decisions to be made until they came up to speed. So,
Okay, Ken Buck.
So bad.
I really thank you for making me sit through that extra couple minutes there, Ryan. That definitely has made my day. So now we have him being very sympathetic to the FBI director and to the Attorney General. So antenna is going up a little bit higher here on Congressman Buck. And I did my little research on him and found an opinion piece that he crafted, looks like last week, that ran in the Washington Post. And if we pull up topic number 8, it's an opinion piece by Congressman Buck. My fellow Republicans, one disgraceful impeachment doesn't deserve another. And it's his argument against any sort of impeachment measures against Joe Biden. And in here, it highlights, he says, quote, "What's missing despite years of investigation is the smoking gun that connects Joe Biden to his ne'er-do-well son's corruption." I don't think that Ken Buck is consuming the same news or news in general that most people are. I think it's a pretty, we've crossed the threshold of reasonable suspicion. We maybe not at the probable cause yet, but that's the point of an impeachment inquiry that the Congress is launching. And again, what's going on with Ken Buck? So did a little bit more research. Topic number 9. This is from a Sarah Fortinsky at The Hill. She writes, Republican Ken Buck rips Colorado GOP letter about January 6 defendants' treatment. And this is statements that Ken Buck was making that said that the mistreatment of January 6 prisoners being held in the gulags, there were false claims that his state's Republican Party was alleging what's going on to those people there, and they're not accurate. And it's a defense from him against his own party in the state of Colorado, which is not really a red state at this point. It was purple. It's now definitely trending extremely blue. I believe they have a homosexual governor. So the Republican Party is not really a very powerful force in that state, and he's standing up and against it. Did a little bit more research on Congressman Buck, which takes us to our next topic. That's topic number 10. And this was a feud that Ken Buck got into with Marjorie Taylor Greene regarding the treatment of these January 6 defendants. And Ken Buck is very displeased with Marjorie Greene. He says in this article that she's factually, she called things factually wrong and completely out of touch. He said that when you've got people that care more about their social media accounts than about the Constitution, you have a real problem in Congress. And look, Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of has that mean girl reputation. She's got her own drama, but she is, to her credit, one of the few who has continued to hammer the January 6 defendants' mistreatment. Not necessarily maybe their lack of justice or due process along the way, but the fact that they're being held in these pretty austere conditions is something that she's brought attention to and continued to argue about. And Congressman Buck did not agree with her and got kind of into a mean girl fight with Marjorie Greene. So this is what we call in investigations a mountain of evidence that Congressman Buck is kind of off the rails of what he alleges to be his foundational beliefs. And back to the original question, is he that guy? Is he willing to do it? What would be his motivation for that? And lo and behold, this week I got my answer in the New York Post. Topic number 11, Ryan, can we pull this one up? Stephen Nelson from the New York Post reports that Representative Ken Buck eyes a CNN job while criticizing the Biden impeachment inquiry. The way this article opens up is actually it's pretty revelatory about not just CNN. But if you go down early on in the article, it says, Buck said privately last month that he was interested in a job at CNN, a source told the Post, after he weighed other options over the past year, including joining a D.C.-based law firm or seeking Biden's nomination to the Federal Trade Commission. So he either wants a cushy name on the letterhead partnership at a obviously Democrat-run D.C. law firm, to be nominated to the Federal Trade Commission by the president, which he would obviously need to seek his favor to do, or he wants to land a nice contributorship at CNN. And you can't get on the formerly just the news network, CNN, by speaking truth to power or being honest and being that guy. You have to bend the knee. So I wanted to bring this out there. I know there was a lot of discussion about other things in the news this week. You know, when it came to John Fetterman's wardrobe, the goings on yesterday. I know Kyle covered the drama that happened with the Attorney General, but this is just another one, and this is the worst kind. This is the guy who is supposed to be wearing your colors if you're a conservative, constitutional conservative, libertarian, and he's a complete wolf in sheep's clothing who has not only betrayed his constituents, but other people who he purports to represent, but when it comes especially to the House Freedom Caucus, which are those few that Wade discussed earlier with us, who are trying to hold the line when it comes to this budget. And do you think Ken Buck is going to be fighting to push back on any sort of woke and weaponized government or an out of control DOJ, FBI? He's already said that he is completely opposed to defunding the FBI. And I really don't know what he believes. I just know that Ken Buck believes in Ken Buck. So food for thought on make sure you are researching who you perceive to be your allies here in these days as we're going into the weekend here. I would like to close out here, Ryan, with our final video. I think that I'll leave it up to the Sarah fans out there to judge. I hoped that to captain the ship, to bring this plane in for a landing as we go into the weekend. Hoping that I did this. Let's run video number 5 and let the audience be the judge.
Where's Tupper? Lost contact.
There he is!
Pyrex pickle blowfish, permission to land. You guys are gonna have to talk me down. I got some damage.
Wait, hold it! Okay, Topper. Ease her in.
Landing gear's frozen.
Looking good.
Lost my radar.
Okay, a little more power now.
I'm out of fuel.
Right for lineup.
Lost a wing.
Doing fine.
There goes the other one.
Okay, Topper. Call the ball.
Touching down.
Hot Shots, the original. Better than Top Gun, I would argue. 1991 was a good year. I tried to bring in some of the 1990s, early 2000s movie references this week. I hope to have brought the plane in for a smoother landing than Topper did in that one. But I'll leave it up to you folks to decide. As we said last week, we're looking at maybe expanding the Kyle Seraphin Show channel. It might include Garrett O'Boyle and Real Steve Friend weekly show, and then looking into some options for myself solo. So if you are interested in anything that was brought today, this is sort of the format that I'm hoping to bring in the future. If and when that does take off, we will make sure we bring you that information. I want to thank Ryan Matta very much today for spinning the dials. I sent him a lot, and he got it all handled. Ryan, can you let the folks know where to find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Rumble. Twitter is Ryan Matta Media, and obviously Rumble. You guys see me in the live chat. You can just click on my username right down there, Ryan Matta. Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Yep. And folks, make sure you like and share this this channel, this stream. Smash the like button. Guys, I am not proficient enough to be involved in the chat yet. I'm going to get myself up to speed as my hosting responsibilities maybe expand to other shows. That's my commitment to you all. I thank you very much for the support today. You can find me. I'm on Truth Social at @real_Steve Friend. I'm on X, formerly Twitter, at Real Steve Friend, doing work at the Center for Renewing America. And also pick up your copy of True Blue, My Journey from Beat Cop to Suspended FBI Whistleblower, which is available on Amazon. It's pinned to the top of my social media profiles. And it's doing well. I'm hoping that we do well enough that we get some more orders in as we go into the Christmas season. And I thank you all for very, very much for your support along the way. Have a great weekend. Make sure you catch Kyle tonight with Tim Pool. Garrett's going to be with him. God bless you all. Enjoy your day.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.